Welcome to the very, very first episode of Future Signal. As I normally said, or I would say on the previous rendition of this podcast, I would say, I'm Jarrett Carpenter and this is Future Signal. So let's start right there. Thank you everyone for showing up. For those who are watching, hopefully more people will come in. I want to get going right away though. Brian Naughton is backstage and I'm going to have him come out. This episode is all about AI, art, and creativity. It's my first time doing a live stream, and then I'm going to take this and then throw it up on podcast platforms and on YouTube. So bear with me if there are technical issues. I'm actually going to slide over right now over to Instagram. Okay, it looks like I am live on Instagram, which is great. Brian has been on the previous version of this podcast 2 times. He came on once to talk about meme coins. This has to do with cryptocurrency if you're not familiar. And then he came on a second time where we talked about basically cryptocurrency and AI. And on this episode, I'm really excited to highlight all of the art that Brian has been creating using AI. And it's a very exciting moment. Brian and I've still never met IRL, but we've been talking on the internet through LinkedIn for years. He is one of the people who's come onto my podcast most, other than Grant, who will actually be on next week, which is really, really exciting. Brian is backstage. He's going to come on. And I just want to say, this is a really exciting moment, and I feel super privileged to kind of be giving a virtual art gallery to everyone else. Brian and I have been talking about this, since I rebranded into Future Signal from More Than Blockchain. I was like, I want Brian on the first episode. Brian has been sharing all of this art on LinkedIn, and I will leave his LinkedIn below in this episode's description. If you're watching on LinkedIn, maybe you'll see Brian tagged in the live. Go ahead and follow him. His art is absolutely incredible, and I think I want to use today to start to talk about provenance, right? We can talk about ownership with art, and I want to use it to talk about creativity. Those are the 2 things. So it says AI, art, and creativity, but I also want to talk about provenance because I think that that's really interesting, especially in the world where the 2 things I'm really looking at all the time when it comes to Future Signal, when I'm looking forward to see tomorrow's signal and ignoring today's noise. That's definitely the slogan of Future Signal. I'm looking at AI and I'm looking at blockchain extremely seriously. Now, there's robotics, there's automation, there's other things I want to talk about. I want to talk about geopolitics on this new form of podcast, on this new brand, on this new direction. I want to talk about climate. I want to talk about health. I want to talk about nutrition. I kind of want to get into more of a generalist podcast without saying that focuses on how tech is going to influence us. Because I do believe over the next 6 to 10 years, the world is just going to move drastically in a new direction, in a different direction. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad, but I really want to start to highlight some of those things. And one of those things I think is AI's impact on culture. And you cannot talk about culture without talking about art. So I'm going to bring Brian up onto stage. Once again, this is my first time doing a live stream like this. So normally, people don't get to see how the sausage is made. But anyways, here's Brian. Brian, thank you so much for hopping on the very first episode of Future Signal. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jarrett. Yeah, good to see you and happy to join you on your inaugural episode here.
I couldn't be honestly more happy when I think about what I want to do with Future Signal. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform and right now you're just hearing Brian's and our voices, make sure you go. I think on Spotify you can watch the video, and if not, check in the episode description. I always leave the YouTube link. Go over to YouTube and make sure you can see the visuals, because in a couple minutes we're going to stop talking and we're going to let the images kind of speak for themselves. Brian has sent over hundreds plus images, maybe 150, 160, and I've whittled those down to, I don't know, 120, 130. It was hard for me to cut out images because I just wanted to keep everything in. I do feel like a virtual art curator, excuse me, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today. And I'm really excited for this episode specifically to kind of live in video, because I think in 10 years, for example, somebody will come across this and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's where AI was then, when people were just talking, and I know that's not where AI is today. AI is moving at light speed, and maybe we can get into that, but focusing on AI and creativity and specifically art is going to be interesting, because I think in 10 years, it's going to be hard to separate AI from art when you have a conversation. And today I think there's still a little, keep AI out of art, if you will. So if you're ready, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and we will start to share. I am going to be manually working the slideshow here, so I won't necessarily be able to see your facial expression. So when you want to just jump in to say something, I'll try to guide. But like I said, we have maybe 130 slides, which is absolutely crazy. If you are watching this on your desktop, or your cell phone, make sure you're getting it to be as big as possible. Most of these images are pretty high def, but by the time I put them in slides and by the time you see them on stream, it may kind of drop it down a little bit, but that's just the nature of the beast. So, Brian, anything you want to say before we get going while we're still here and you and I are still taking up a decent size of the real estate on the screen?
Well, just that, I stumbled into AI, text to image AI, artistic generative AI. A couple of years ago, I was on the wait list for dall-e. So, and my early experiments were not especially sophisticated. I think the first prompt I did was an ice skating polar bear in the style of a Renaissance painting, and I was just amazed, really. And then another one I did was an elephant looking at art in an art gallery, and a chaise longue in the style of a banana, and sort of triangulating those three things. I kind of realized, even though it was very early days at the time, that we were in a completely different kind of ballpark artistically. And then the only other thing to say really is that I come from an artistic background, so I think that's kind of colored my approach, leaning on things like photography, which I've done for many years. So.
Yeah, and we're going to start with your photos first. So people are going to get to see your photography first. And actually, I'm not sure if you're on Instagram, but I am excited to put them up on Instagram and share these images with people. Hopefully I have your right to your go ahead to do that.
Sure.
But I think one of the other things you have, we're going to get into it, so I won't just talk about it, but there's a photo where it's like a concession stand where people are buying popcorn or hot dogs or whatever they're buying. And the lighting is just amazing. And if I saw that, well, I'm interested to ask the question. Put 2 of your photos in amongst 10 others. So there's 8 others that are AI, and say which ones are the ones that are AI, because I do think on some level it's becoming, and I know that there's ways that you can forensically do this by blowing the pictures up and looking at them in certain pixelations, and there's certain things. And I actually have a picture that I haven't shared yet from the Bogota airport, and I don't have a way to bring that up on the screen, which is too bad, but it's totally AI. And when you walk by it, you just see 2 human beings because our eyes are just so used to seeing 2 human beings. But I walked by and I was looking and I was like, wait, whoa, because the woman, it's a woman and a man in an embrace, and it's like a high fashion, but it's totally AI. And the reason why I knew is I started to look at the teeth, and it looks like they have braces, but they don't. Their teeth are just thick. And then I look down, and the woman has 3 fingers, but 4 knuckles on both fingers. And then when you look closer, there's just weird things about the ears, I think, what is that called in AI? There's that uncanny valley. And it like, you have to look to see it, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I know that that may sound cliche or may not make sense, but anyways, let's get into your art. I could just talk to you about AI and art all day, but I'm really excited that we have visuals for people because I myself am a visual learner. So let's get right in and let's go. So here we are, AI and creativity. So as I said, we're going to start with Brian's photos. So these are photos that you've taken, and I've tried to call out all that remains. Ooh, okay, good. Phew. I've organized the photos, and I was like, oh man, hopefully I'm doing this right. So let's start. The first amount of photos are called All That Remains. And this is kind of a weird dynamic because I have the presentation or the slides, and I would like you to talk about them. So as we go in, this is called All That Remains, and I think that that's what you've called these photos. So if you want to talk about them, and where was this actually taken? Because this is just a horse standing seemingly next to some rock in a field.
Yeah, All That Remains was, I did an MA in photography, and All That Remains was my sort of big project, which was part of the final group exhibition that we did. And it's what they call in sort of whatever intellectual circles, autoethnography. So it was a kind of an autobiographical work that was looking at my ancestry, my ancestral heritage, which is very much Irish. And so I went back and I searched through whatever birth records and death records and marriage records and all of that kind of stuff, and tried to piece together on my paternal side, my family history. And these photos were kind of, in a symbolic way, representing aspects of that. This picture particularly is taken on the grounds of Moydrum Castle, which some people may recognize. It's a part of a U2 album cover called The Unforgettable Fire. And Moydrum was like a stately home, which was burned down by the IRA as a precursor to the Irish War of Independence. And my family were displaced during the Cromwellian plantation periods from a similar part of the world to this, which is near Athlone. So this was one I went into the grounds of the castle because I'd known that that U2 had taken a picture there, and I found the horse there, and I just thought it was an amazing scene. So I took that in the grounds of Moydrum Castle as a kind of symbolic reference to the history of the place. And then the next one that you were looking at there is I was just driving around in Sligo, County Sligo, and came across this old, what I assume is kind of a summer house, which was completely abandoned and the roof had been torn off. But there was just something a bit kind of romantic about it, really. So and unusual looking.
See, when I look at this, I think it's AI because and I'm not sure necessarily why, but it just looks. Once again, hopefully, maybe I'll have a better reason why I say that by the end of this. But when I saw this one, I knew it was in Brian's photo set, but I was just kind of like, wow, okay. And maybe we'll come back to this, and I'll be able to speak to it a little bit more as we get through some of your photos, and then some of the AI influence. Is this also in the castle?
That's a different castle. That's called Classieborne Castle, and the mountain in the background is Ben Bulben. This is in County Sligo as well. And I had to climb up quite a large hill to get that vantage point, which because I wanted the mountain in the background, and I actually had to trespass in order to get the image, which was quite funny at the time, and it was very windy, and I had a tripod. So I like this image because the light and the cloud cover makes it sort of slightly more dynamic, and the sea was pretty rough that day as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's only white caps. It's just all white. It's all froth. So it's moving along. This is also beautiful. And this one, when we get to the snow-covered pictures that you've done with AI, I will probably bring this photo up again just because of the way the trees are so perfectly vertical, and they almost look like, at least the three in the middle look perfectly positioned, beyond just nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think with photography, it's you see something that interests you, and for me, I don't know, it was this arrangement of dead trees against a kind of a fairly bleak landscape with the mountains in the background, and but I look through various other frames, and it's quite often it's a sort of a compositional decision that you're making in terms of what's in the frame and what's left out of the frame. But I was very happy with this one. That's very close to Classieborne, which is on the Mullaghmore Peninsula in County Sligo.
Yeah, this is absolutely beautiful. I wasn't aware that Ireland. This is in Ireland, yes?
Yeah, the Republic of Ireland on the west coast.
The Republic of Ireland. I wasn't aware that it had those kind of flat top that you see. Those hills into mountains that have the flat tops.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful landscape. This is maybe one of my favorite photos. You just caught the perfect moment of these children jumping off this, jumping into the ocean, having some fun.
Yeah, so this is the Atlantic Ocean. It's Galway Bay at a place called what's it called? Blackrock, which is near Salt Hill in County Galway. And Galway is where my ancestral family members wound up after they'd been displaced by Cromwell from Athlone. So I was basically following kind of a certain geographical path. And this was a November morning, quite early. So it was freezing cold. So you've got to hand it to them for their guts to jump straight in.
The Atlantic, and we're more or less around the same, level on the Atlantic. I want to say on the meridian. I don't even know if that's accurate, but when you look at the ocean, and no matter when you jump in the Atlantic, even in August, it is absolutely frigid. So good on them.
Yeah.
The next couple photos are called Brighton, and this looks like people doing slackline. And what is the thing in the background? Was this from an old, and I'm thinking of the word in Spanish, muelle. Was this from an old, gosh, what's the word in English? Someone help me.
I'll help you. It's a pier. It's the
a
old
pier. Thank you. A pier.
Yeah, it's the old West Pier in Brighton.
Okay.
I lived in Brighton for the best part of a decade, and it was a wonderful place to take pictures. And the West Pier was burned down a long time ago, and there's another pier there now. But slowly over time, it's been reclaimed by the sea, and now it's just a kind of a skeletal shell. But these posts, which used to form part of the promenade or the underpinning for the promenade that went out to the pier, are now being used as posts for slacklining, as you pointed out. And yeah, I just liked the kind of the compositional elements of these kids playing on slacklines and against the West Pier, which is a popular symbol of Brighton and the local kind of scene, if you like.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of the Atlantic to you even today. And it's interesting. You've said Galway and Brighton. One of the neighborhoods in Boston is Brighton. And growing up as a kid, I played against a soccer team. It was called the Galway Rovers, right? Which was founded, I believe, by, people from Ireland who came over and they wanted to keep the name alive. So we're worlds apart, but it's funny. All the names of the towns where I live they're all from England, or they're all from the UK, I should say.
Right. And even New York and places like that, right?
Exactly. So yeah, right. New York, Brighton Beach. So fish and chips, this is the picture I was talking about. I just think it is, if I didn't know that it wasn't AI, this is what I think AI would come up with if I put in the prompt. New England beach concession stand, people buying stuff, open sign, someone holding a dog, dog on a leash or something. This is one of my favorite photos. This and I think the slackline was also pretty cool because of how you have the older pier way in the background, and in the foreground you have kids who maybe aren't even aware of that history, and they're just doing slackline. But this is one of my favorite photos of yours. And if you're just tuning in, we're currently reviewing some of Brian's photography that he did for his MA, and we're going to continue on that journey after we've looked at Brian's photos to really look at what he's doing right now with AI and continue to talk about creativity. So where was this taken, Brian?
This was in Brighton as well. So just down by the seafront, in Kemp Town, which is a sort of a neighborhood of Brighton. And it was just one of those kind of moments, really. I think it was September, around just after kids have gone back to school, and there's no more. People have finished their summer holiday breaks, so there was a kind of a sense that it was just locals, and that the tourists had gone home, and it was just a kind of like a quiet moment with locals chatting to each other. And I just liked the scene, really, so I just grabbed it.
I love it. And it was silly for me to ask where it is. This section is called Brighton, and we were just talking about Brighton. One of the things I love about this, and once again, I'm not sure if you can see this on stream. I know you see it because it's your photo, but if you look to the right third, halfway up, it says Crazy Golf, £1 per person. please pay at kiosk. And I think that this is interesting because I think in 20 years or 10 or 20 years, you and I really met through cryptocurrency. And this will be like the pictures I see of Fenway Park where people used to go see the Boston Red Sox and it was like 5 cents for the bleachers, right? The idea of paying a pound for mini golf or for putt putt is going to seem crazy, probably in 10 to 15 years, where it will be minimum 10 pounds, right? 10 quid. So I think that that's a good, just like many people in crypto, or especially in Bitcoin, instead of using calendar dates, they'll use block height. I think this is another thing where it's like, wow, it used to be $1 to play mini golf. So anyway.
Well, this would probably have been around, I don't know, 2015, 2016. And
Yeah.
I'd actually say, we've all lived through this period of inflation recently. I mean, I'd say probably we're looking at £5 for crazy golf now. So yeah, we're already, it's already starting to look like a low number, isn't it?
It already looks like a deal. We're going to try to stay away from crypto on this episode, but when I see that, that's the thing that goes off in my head when my great aunt would talk to me about going to the Boston Red Sox and sitting in the bleachers for 5 cents or 10 cents. And, now it's $60 to sit in the bleachers and the experience hasn't changed, right? The overall experience is still the same. You're going to sit with friends, you're going to eat some food, and you're going to watch a sporting event, but it's gone up exponentially. So that's the first thing I saw when I kind of zoomed in more on this photo, because I really like how it's done. This is another one that I think is just another perfect moment, just like the couple people jumping off into the ocean. How many, and the one on this one, I have to ask, how many times did it take before you got this image?
Well, I was using like a Leica rangefinder camera, so it's
Okay.
not like you get the chance of doing lots of frames. So it was just one frame, and the guy was jumping off the roof of the structure that you see above
Wow.
on his skateboard, trying to do some kind of jump, and he actually hurt his ankle quite badly and hobbled off. So he didn't get a chance to try again, and it was. I just got lucky, really. I was there at the right time, and I saw him jump, and I hit the shutter at the right time, and I got that nice kind of shadow cast against the backdrop as well. And he had a nice sort of fashionable t-shirt on as well. So it's just got that sense of a slightly, a nice kind of urban street photograph, really, with a bit of an edge to it.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I love to the left. I love how you can see up and you can see the natural light hit against that tile as you go up the stairs and you take a left and go up to whatever is on the second level. So you really feel that there are levels. Not only is he jumping from a top level down to a bottom level, but as you look and your eye is kind of caught into where that light is in the back, I just thought that was really cool. This is also a phenomenal image.
Yeah, I mean, I think compositionally, and it can be kind of subconscious or unconscious, really, is that you can see here the frame is kind of divided into naturally into perhaps thirds, but also vertically and horizontally. You can see that there's some kind of geometry in the photo, and I think whilst it often it's a bit of a spray and pray thing as well, because it can be a numbers game, and obviously the ones that you select are the ones that work, but often your eye is drawn to compositionally to a kind of a scene or a frame that makes sense in geometric terms.
Absolutely. And I just want to take a second and say we've got a couple comments here. It just says, "Hey, what's up?" I don't know. This is on Twitch, so I'll bring this up. This is the first comment I've got on Future Signal. Hey, what's up? So thank you, Diggs. By the way, 7. I'm going to try to monitor comments. If you're watching this and you have a comment for Brian about any of the questions, please throw it in the chat. I'm running the slideshow from a different tab, so I'll try to be conscious of that. But if you have a question about any of the art, any of the photography you're going to see today, please go ahead and put that in the chat. This is another one that's just absolutely incredible. And like, I don't know if I can use these. I mean, I assume I can use these for my screensavers, but this one is just like, it screams. It needs to be like blown up on a wall or on your a 10 by 10 on a wall or just somewhere, because I think it's so beautiful. And I think the longer you look at it, the more you see. That is also a very, very, very busy pier. And where I am up in New England, I don't have piers like this that are this busy that have stuff on. Maybe they did in years past, but this is just such a busy pier. Is the Brighton Pier still like this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a contemporary shot. Again, probably, I think this was probably 2017,
Okay.
and it was September. And Brighton is on the south coast, about less than an hour away from London. So people call it in the same way that Le Touquet is called Paris Plage, um, for people who take holidays in Paris on the coast. Brighton has also been called London by the sea. So you've got a lot of these things like tourist attractions and lots of amusement stuff going on this pier. And in the background, you can see the West Pier,
Yep.
the remains of the West Pier that was in the image that you showed earlier on.
Yeah, this is a really powerful image. Obviously, the sun behind the clouds, and it's just incredible. And it looks like there's some other type of a character or figure over that's underneath the pier to the on the third on the right third, that's right in front of what the West Pier would be. It almost
Yeah, I think
looks
they
like
might have a surfboard in their hand or a
exactly.
wakeboard or something. And I mean, for me, it was a mixture of things. Obviously, the pier is interesting, but how many pictures of piers can you have really? So it has to have something else. And for me, it had a number of components. One of which is this person walking through the incoming tide on the left-hand side, and the other is the fact that the sand is actually reflecting the light from the pier and the sky as well. So I think those two things coupled to the pier and the backdrop make it more of a sort of a nice whatever picture postcard kind of image.
Yeah, it is. You should be sharing this with the Brighton Tourism Board because that's incredible. This is also one that when I saw, and when you start to see some of the other photos that Brian's put together using AI, just because the colors are so bright and the composition is so perfect, it just looks. I don't know. It's absolutely incredible. Can you? Why was this person doing this particular thing? This kind of wave on a carousel. Talk to me about that because it just looks
Yeah,
like. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny is a reggaeton artist, and this is a weird one to bring up. He's a reggaeton artist out of Puerto Rico. I'm sure you've heard of him, but he has a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's a video called Calleita, and in that video, there is, and it may even be this carousel, but there's a carousel in the middle of a beach, and it just looks out of place. It's just like it's so close to the water, similar to how this one is. That it's. Please talk to me about this picture.
Yeah, so the carousel, I don't know if it's a couple of years since I've been back to Brighton, but the carousel was a feature of Brighton. It's there. I think they may be tarped over in the winter, but
Okay.
it's a fixture of Brighton Beach.
Hmm.
And it's you walk. I used to go on regular walks, so I walked past it a lot. And on this particular day, I stumbled into a photo shoot for I think it was for a gadget mag, and they had a whole crew of people, like makeup team, people standing around with laptops and all the rest of it, and a pro photographer with Hasselblad pro equipment, and I just decided to stop and take a few pictures because they couldn't really stop me, but they were actually quite pissed off with me being there. And so it's like the opposite of a photo bomb. I decided to photo bomb their photo shoot and
Okay.
take a few pictures of my own.
This is the
Um,
background I needed because it looks so professionally set up. And from the angle you're at, she's almost perfectly in the center third. and the whole left third is perfectly, beach and blue and sea, and the whole right third is carousel, and she's kind of the mixture between. I mean, it's just, the image is absolutely stunning. So I can see why they were angry at you as you stole their nice setup.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think she was modeling a camera, is like
Mm,
a point and shoot camera, which was going into a gadget mag.
got you.
So anyway, I took a few frames and I moved on quickly because it was clear that they weren't happy with me being there.
Okay, well, as we come to the end of your photos and we get into your Brian's AI photos, I want to call it the fact that you photobombed a professional shoot and you also trespassed to get some of your photography. So I like that you are, a true artist, really breaking the laws to be able to get what you want. We're gonna dive into your AI photos, and you sent over, I don't know, 10 or 12 different folders through Drive to me, and I went through and I took out photos. Originally, I was like, for Brian's photos, I am only going to put 5 photos up for each. But unfortunately, I have no impulse control when it came to Brian's art, and there's more than that. So it's already half, we're already half past, and I want to make sure we stay kind of close. I do think we're going to go over, so hopefully people can stay with us as we do this. There's a lot of photos, and I'm not really sure how we go through them and talk about them, but they are broken up in different, if this is the virtual tour, they are in different galleries, if that makes sense. Each room is a different concept. So let's let's start with architecture. I've seen photos like this on the internet, but like I say, when I saw your photos, I believe it was the Mercedes ones or the Coca-Cola, and we're going to get into both of those, that I originally saw on LinkedIn. I was blown away. And I just think that they're so amazing. And yeah, I'm speechless. Let's just dive in. Um, once again, I'm not sure how to go through these. I'm not sure how long we should take on each one. The one thing I will say is that in college, my college girlfriend, who would go on to get her MFA, she once shared with me a tidbit, which I want to share now, and that was pretty enlightening. She said that when you go into an art gallery and you're walking through a physical art gallery, she said most people, the average person, looks at a piece of art or a sculpture or some kind of mixed multimedia for 2 seconds. That's the average. That's something that always stuck in my head. It lives rent free, because that way, if I'm in an art gallery, sometimes I'll be really intentional. If I walk by something and I don't really want to look at it, I'll even count to 3 or 4. And I've given it 50% or 100% more time than the average person. So this has already been up way longer than that for me to give that little anecdote and background. But yeah, please talk to me how we should go through these, because I'm going to just kind of click through.
Yeah, I mean, they're not to be dwelled on, really. I think the main point here for me is that um, I've approached generative AI from a photographic perspective, but I think that it has broader implications for all kinds of industries and sectors, including interior design, architecture, fashion, industrial design, etc. So that was really the point for me. There's a woman called AR June Chow. AR, I assume, stands for architect, and she has organized various challenges via LinkedIn with different themes. Like the theme for this one was gold, I think, and everyone clubs together and puts their own ideas in, and then she showcases them on her channel. So yeah, it was a bit of fun, but it's a way to explore and experiment with the things that you can do with AI. And this theme for this one was red, I think, and I just went with this kind of Mexican vibe and these nice colors, the terracottas and the purples and deep pinks and things like oranges and so on. And yeah.
This one especially, and you have a couple. Let me see. Yeah, you have a couple that look from. This literally looks like San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, where I've been. There are many homes that I've been in that have a very similar natural light creates shadows on some kind of a terracotta earth wall mixed with a lot of plants. And I don't know. how to describe the furniture, but very kind of minimalistic furniture. Everything is hyper intentional. And so like with this picture specifically, I've been in a house that looks very similar to this. The only thing is the floor wasn't as ornate and marble. It was a little bit of a cheaper, more porcelain floor, more ceramic floor, I guess I should say. It was a little bit different, and the windows were not, floor to ceiling. But my question for you is, have you been to Mexico? Because I don't like, this looks so incredible. Like, have you been to this part of the world or the southwest of the United States where we have images that look like this?
No, I haven't at all ever been to Mexico. So I mean, I was what was I using? It was kind of Grant has been asking about what prompts. I'd have to really go back and take another look at the prompts, but it was partly materials like marble and partly a color palette, and I can't remember whether it was a contemporary Mexican villa, or but basically if it's picked up on the Mexican flavor, it's partly just the AI's accuracy at being able to depict that, and a certain amount of sort of curatorial oversight in terms of which images to choose, but not based on any personal hands-on experience of the place.
It's interesting though, because it looks like, I don't know, it just picks up on certain places in Mexico, that Mexico has like the pueblos mágicos, the magic little towns. And this looks like I said, San Miguel de Allende is one of them. And I've been in rooms very similar to this. So I was just blown away. They didn't necessarily have all the palms in the back like this, but it's similar, very similar feels.
Mhm.
This, and you have, let me just skip ahead. Okay. Sorry, everyone, skipping ahead. You shouldn't do that, but I did. These next three just seem like they're out of a dream. Like the first couple that we looked at look more, I can envision that being a real place on the planet that, I see on Airbnb, for example. These, however, this feels like the Jetsons meets Elon's Mars fantasy.
Yeah, this was a bit more playful, really. The theme was white,
Okay.
and I did a lot that were just very very plain white, and here I was mixing different colors, like these kind of autumnal maple tree type colors with a white stucco backdrop. I can't remember exactly what the prompt was, but I was definitely going for a more playful, less kind of whatever photorealistic representation of the world. It was a bit more kind of out there, and I as the last image probably.
Yeah, I mean this if it weren't so, I mean, I guess I feel like there's parts of Greece that have this exact same architecture that look very similar to this, but I don't know if they
Mm,
have necessarily, just due to how dry it is, that type of like
yeah,
flora and fauna.
yeah,
But this last image, this one is just totally out of like a Wes Anderson movie, where I can see people like running down the stairs comically, but he's actually created this physical house. I don't know if you saw the new Willy Wonka, but it looks like a Willy Wonka beach house in that
yeah.
like take. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the wonderful things about AI is that it will come up with things that you know um, you couldn't imagine really. And in terms of creativity, that's a huge opportunity. That if you're working with AI, it will come up with things that you couldn't have imagined yourself. I'm sure there are some people who would be able to come up with a structure as fantastical as this, but I'm certainly not one of them.
I'm also not an architect, but I'm sure that on some of these structures, an architect would look at and be like, not only is that super expensive, but we don't necessarily even have a way to do that safely. If, for example, and once again, I'm looking at this, but if you go up the stairs, it looks like you slam into trees. I don't know if there's a way to get by the trees. So, on some of these images, especially with the architect stuff, it's like I don't know how utilitarian it would be, if that makes sense. It's like
Hmm.
it's like It's like jeans that don't have pockets in them. They look really great, but are they utilitarian? Do they have a means to be used? If jeans were always something you could put stuff in the pockets, right? So, um,
I mean, I think I certainly take the point on board with this image because it's a fantasy kind of
it is 100% fantasy.
yeah. But I mean, I think modern architectural or engineering practices with steel and all the rest of it do enable you to do some amazing things structurally in terms of engineering new forms and new shapes. When you look at, for example, what's going on in Dubai, on the Dubai skyline. Um, so I think there's a chance that AI will throw up stuff that may present challenges, but there's also a sense in which it could be breaking new ground. Um, so I think the applications for architectural mood boarding are potentially profound and will get as these tools get more sophisticated. I can't envisage a future in which these tools won't be used for architectural reasons.
I completely agree, and I think they probably push architects to really think outside of whatever box they're in, or I know that's cliche, think outside the box, but it's not like the box doesn't exist. And I do actually want to go back probably to this picture, and I want to share a comment that Grant just put up, see if you see what your thoughts are. So Grant says, "Dear Midjourney, my crypto bag hits 10 million and I become an international man of mystery consigned to flee from potential crypto kidnappers in Mexico. What would my hacienda Reish place look like?" So I think that's what Grant thinks
The
the
prompt is
prompt.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Which
It's a
I
it's a great prompt. I'll he can forward it to me and I'll check. I'll try it out.
exactly. I think this is the last one in this. Yeah. So we're gonna get into black and white portraits now. People have probably seen like that architects. I've seen similar things. That last one, I had never seen anything like that to create AI. Maybe it's been done before, but I'd never seen some of these black and white portraits. However, I have seen, and maybe you can remind me because I couldn't think of it. What the website or anyone watching, please leave in the comments the website where you can go and see real human beings, but they aren't real. So they're not real human beings. Sorry, they look like they're real human beings. You know the website I'm talking about? It changes every like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I do. I don't know the name of it, but it definitely rings a bell. But yeah, this was where I kind of started my sort of trying to get into photorealism and portraiture. I mean, I started with black and white photography in with my own photographic journey, so it kind of made sense to see what I could come up with in terms of black and white portraits, just classic portraits, really.
These are just incredible. And for the one on the left, and you have a couple that look similar where it's an older woman and she's just it looks like a Time magazine shot, and they're just asking her to look deep into the camera. The one on the left, how many prompts did you have to get in until you kind of got to where you wanted to be? Like, what was the creation process to get these things to look hyper realistic? And then the man on the right, that looks like it could be the grandfather of the great great grandfather of someone who died in 1860 from pneumonia or something. Like that's the backstory. How to get these photos, these two specific photos, to where you wanted. What's that creation process? And this is where we do touch upon creativity, because with the houses, you're like, hey, I couldn't have come up with that. I couldn't have imagined that, but I do love where I was. I do love the end result. I love the end product. Is this what you imagined when you started to create either of these faces?
Um, Again, I've prompted so many images into existence that I'd have to go back and sort of refer to the the prompts that I was using. But in general terms, in answer to your question, it's like, I mean, the process could be divided into a number of different components. I mean, the first of which is kind of having some kind of clear idea in your head. That could be described maybe poetically or whatever. In other words, to have a clear understanding of what you want to prompt for. Um, the other is a question of selection. So, um, you know, uh, which ones you choose to focus on or to shortlist, or it's like a curatorial process. And
Hmm.
then the other is a process of reiteration. So, I mean, I think maybe what differentiates some of my work from some of the other work that I've seen, for example, on the Midjourney homepage or Explorer page, is that I might be inclined to start a process where some people choose to finish it, in the sense that if I come up with an image that I like the look of, I'll redo that 20, 50 times until I can't identify a single thing that would betray the fact that it was made by AI, or
Hmm.
there's something magical about the expression that makes it look very human and not robotic or whatever. So I think it's just a question of that kind of curatorial approach and maybe attention to detail that I've developed because of my background, my photographic background, and in other words, my kind of the habit being formed of having scrutinized images in great detail in order to select ones that work and discard the ones that don't.
Yeah, because I don't. This seems like a huge iterative process. For example, the one on the right, to be able to get the window and the shadow and the window frame to be so perfectly overlaid over her face, and yet you can still see the eye on the left, even though you have to like look a little bit harder because it isn't a shadow, but there's enough light. And the eye on the right, there's so much light going into it because it isn't blocked out by the window frame. I was just blown away by this photo. And then the one of the twins is obviously super cool, but this photo, particularly on the right, was one of the more stunning portraits that I think you did.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. And I think, there's an intensity in terms of the contrast. You've got nice deep blacks, and you've rightly pointed out about the kind of like the shadow and light, but the fact that it hasn't, her eyes are still very much in feature. So I think with that one, I probably, again, this was a prompt and it was working, and I was getting light coming in through a window, and I was liking what I was seeing. But this may have been um, it's funny enough, it's a bit like looking through a contact sheet in the old days of, like, where people would make a contact sheet with strips of negatives, and then they'd look through the negatives, and
Wow.
you've got this one doesn't quite work, this one doesn't quite work, this one doesn't quite work, and then you're on to that, and you circle that because you like that. So this was one of maybe, yeah, maybe even 100 images in this kind of style that just popped, and then that's the one that you choose.
Yeah, this one's super interesting to me because the window frame in theory is just multiple crosses, right? So it's multiple 90-degree angles. And if you see, there should be some other shadow over her eyebrow if the one is over her nose, like we're missing a cross. So that would maybe tell me that it's AI. And I'm thinking back to um oh god, what's that famous image that looks doctored? But I feel like we're still missing something there, but I could be wrong. But it's also a mystery to me because I can't see the exact window frame, right? This could be the perfect shadow from the sun or the moonlight, likely moonlight that's coming in and hitting her face. But I just think this is one of the best ones. We're going to dive into your Coke series now. And you have a Coke series, and you have a Vogue, and you also have a Mercedes. So those are three brands. Hopefully, if anyone's watching, they're excited about your designs, and we're not going to get into some IP nightmare. But I don't even know if you could get in an IP nightmare. I think as long as you're not selling these images, I think you're okay. Is that right?
Yeah, to the best of my understanding. I mean, obviously, I'm trying not to be to denigrate any of the brands that I've done work with. So the idea really was to look at sort of futuristic design packaging for, well, in this case for Coca-Cola, and Midjourney seemed to know with a fairly high degree of accuracy what the Coca-Cola logo looked like, which in itself is interesting because obviously in terms of the training data, it means that that is a very recognizable brand in the world. I mean, for example, I mean, if you ask to do for an image of Elon Musk, Midjourney knows what Elon Musk looks like, whereas if you ask for a portrait of Gary Gensler, it has it has a very little idea of what he looks like. It has a general sense. So Coca-Cola is clearly, as one of the biggest brands in the world, it's everywhere, and therefore Midjourney has a fairly easy job of replicating it. And I was just looking at, carrying through some of the original Coke bottle kind of design language and motifs, but overlaying it with more sort of modern materials and playful designs, really, just to see what happened.
Yeah, these are fascinating. I think when I first saw them too on LinkedIn, I think I saw this one first, and I just did a double take. I was like, wait, Coke hasn't ever launched that. What is that? Um, and so these are just phenomenal. The Einstein, wow, I can't spell Einstein, so there's that on public display
Einstein.
there. Einstein. There's no spell check on the platform I use. So there you go,
Right.
Einstein. That's an evolution as well. The Einstein name. So I'm gonna kind of run through these. This was called V1.
Yeah.
This is
So
V2. Yeah.
yeah. So the idea here is I've used the same prompt, which is something to do with a fine art portrait, black and white portrait of Albert Einstein, and then just run it through version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, version 5 of Midjourney to show you the evolution of the output. So V1 here is, well, it's kind of not even a person, really, is it? I mean, you can just about tell it's a person. You certainly couldn't tell it's Albert Einstein, and they look very deformed. And again, but as you'll see, the kind of as we go through the different versions, how amazingly uh, realistic. Here it's kind of slightly cartoon-like. It still looks a bit waxy or something. It's obviously a depiction of Albert Einstein, but it looks a bit kind of cartoony or just not real. Whereas the final one, version 5, looks very much more like a lifelike portrait. And I'm just amazed by that in 2 years, where it's emerged from, which was a bit like Chat GPT 3 or whatever. We've come a long way in a very short period of time.
We've come a long way, and I like this series, and I put the series in the middle, not for any other reason, just I thought it was a good reminder that this is where we have started when we started using prompts with whatever prompt you used. And as Midjourney has increased its capabilities, this is where we end up. I can't imagine where we are going to be even in a year or 2 years. So I thought that was a good reminder. Now, your Mercedes photos, images, I think they're some of the most spectacular ones because I think everyone here between Coca-Cola and Mercedes, if you are on human earth, you have seen either Coca-Cola, you've seen a can, you've probably drank Coca-Cola, and you've probably seen a Mercedes or you've seen a car. So you can kind of, these are things that you can picture. Maybe you can't picture what a Mexican hacienda looks like, or that it almost looks like a house that was architecturally out in Sweden because it was a fireplace and just how big the roof was anyway. But Mercedes, I think, is something everyone has seen. And so when I see this, I was just blown away. And I'm going to kind of run through these quickly. But talk to me as we're going through where, was this Batmobile inspired? What did you try to put in for these prompts to get them to look so smooth? Like this one specifically is unbelievable.
I think I was tweaking one prompt. So I don't. The landscapes were changing slightly, but this was much more to do with running a prompt and tweaking it a bit, and just choosing one that looked kind of like it was heading the right way, and then reiterating it and reiterating it. So it becomes a bit like, I guess you could equate it to natural selection. So in the sense that through the survival of species through natural selection or whatever, you take one thing and then you reiterate it. And what you're doing is you're kind of funneling down, honing down into something that you like the look of. So it's not always a question of getting very delicate with the prompts. It's a question of a different kind of workflow that involves reiterating things potentially hundreds of times before the logo's right, the wing mirrors are right, the tires are right, the background's right, the color of the bonnet is right. There aren't any hallucinations or inconsistencies with the image, etc.
Yeah, this one specifically, the lights almost look like eyes, and if you squint hard enough, it looks like a cat's eyes. And these Mercedes images, I just think are fantastic. And this AMG, how it says AMG on the front, which is totally a Mercedes thing. One of the things you'll know if you have played around with any AI is getting the text to be right. We create AI images a lot at work where I work for a Bitcoin mining company, and Bitcoin mining is still a very nascent industry. And so I don't think the large learning models have enough to go off of. And oftentimes they, with any text on screen, it's always a crapshoot. But these tires look like they are, been run through mud, and you can see kind of the brand of the tire. And this is one of the cleaner pictures I think that looks realistic to a point. Like I believe that exists. This one also, maybe I could believe that it exists, but this one feels like an SUV that Mercedes will drop in 2026, and I see driving down the street.
Yeah, I like that, and I think it's to do with the matte kind of
The
olive
matte is really
green as
nice
well.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, with the gull wing ones, I excluded a lot of the gull wing ones because I noticed that one side, the driver's side, the gull wing door, was kind of elongated. I was expecting
Mm.
it to be symmetrical, and so I chose ones which were closer to being balanced in terms of the symmetry of the doors. But I subsequently found out when I went looking at images of Mercedes gull wings, the classic ones, that the doors are actually asymmetrical. One is larger than the other. So it was funny
Oh.
that I actually thought that AI was messing it up and that it was actually getting it right. So yeah, but like in question, you mentioned the AMG thing. The number of times I had AMG on the front of
Mhm.
a car and it didn't say AMG. So again, it's a question of just patience and persistence until you get something that works on all fronts.
And I like this one because you came out with this image probably before Tesla had launched their bus,
I did,
their
yeah.
taxi, and now this looks very similar to their taxi, which also looks like the kind of human transports that were in iRobot, which is another. We could probably talk about that for a while. But here, let's keep moving. We're somehow almost at an hour, and I don't even think we're halfway through. So hopefully, people are going to stay with us. These next Nike ones are really cool because sneaker culture, sneakerheads is a huge part of commerce right now. I have friends who collect shoes, whether they want to wear shoes, so it says something culturally. They're like, want to, people call them like, hey, I love those Jordans, whatever, number fours or whatever. I don't know enough about it to even sound like I'm dangerous, but these images that you've created here are this looks like candy, right? It just looks, um, this looks like something that actually Nike has come out with. They all look like something Nike has come out with on some level, even though the structure of this shoe I feel like looks more like an Adidas, which is interesting. Um, this is another Nike one that I could totally see up on Nike.com. That's done by an artist that you have to pay a little bit more for. These corduroys are absolutely in style. This is something you see. Corduroy is kind of back as a fashion texture, as a fashion piece of clothing. Um, anything I wanted to ask you, why these shoes? This isn't something, these look different than the other things that you have done, and culturally sneakerheads. I don't picture you as a sneakerhead, but Brian, maybe you are a sneakerhead.
Not really. I mean, I do have a slight soft spot for Air Force Ones as a design. I think they're really standout classic sneaker profiles. And again, it was a recognizable brand, and I wanted to see if you could make new colorways and custom designs and use new kinds of textiles. and whether or not AI would be obliging in that process. And I was amazed with the results, but again, it's an indication that AI tools can be used for industrial design and mood boarding and coming up with new colorways and all kinds of things. It's probably a bit hit and miss at the moment, but it, um, if we can do this now, then well, just skate to the puck. It's like in a couple of years' time, this stuff is going to be bulletproof, really.
Yeah, one of the things about this specific image is the lines on the sole on the bottom. The fact that those are seemingly all the same width of separation, equi separated, equidistant. There's the front of the sole, which has kind of the divots or the pinpoints, and then there's the normal sole, which looks like the edge of a quarter, right, in the U.S., or it looks like an edge of a coin. The fact that those are so perfect, and the stitching above, I look at this and I don't think I could tell that it was AI maybe. I mean, it would take me a lot longer to kind of get lost in, I think, what we're calling the uncanny valley, or just get lost in the, oh, I actually think that this is AI. And I also want to put up the comment. This is probably was made, I'm seeing it now, is made about 3 or 4 minutes ago when we were talking about Mercedes, but it's just as stunning from a LinkedIn user. If it says LinkedIn users, because they're probably not my friends, so they could be one of your followers. There's just not going to come up because it's not going to give me their name.
I think
Yeah,
it would be very, very difficult to tell with this one. You might suggest that the back foot is potentially a bit of a giveaway in
it's a
terms of
little
the.
bit longer. Yeah, because it shouldn't
Yeah,
be longer on both the back and the front. Yeah,
it should be potentially shorter because of perspective. So that
exactly,
that might be a kind of an anatomical giveaway. But the average person looking at an image wouldn't spot that at all. And
exactly.
again, you could just, if that was the case, you just redo this image 100 times until you had it absolutely bang on.
100%, 100%. Odd couples. I want to kind of fly through this. You sent me, Brian. You sent me too many odd couples. Okay,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
of
I'm
all
sorry.
the.
This is this is just a sort of there's a function called weird on Midjourney, which allows you to add a bit of kind of just surreal vibes. And so this was just a kind of like, I like the idea of messing around with couples that just looked very odd, hence the name. So this was just a bit of fun. I was exploring whether or not something like this might work as an NFT collection, because there's a bit of kind of like more of a degen kind of humorous edge to it.
I,
So
I
yeah.
think that this could totally be an NFT. That's one of my questions at the end is how are what does it look like to put these on blockchain? But this one was my favorite, with the woman who's kind of, half out from behind, but not, it's perfectly, she's in, right in the mid. I don't know. I love this. If you look at it quick enough, it almost looks like the pyramid is a hat, but it's not. I love the orange matching with the tie. I want to kind of move quickly. This one is easily the weirdest because it looks so freaking real. There's someone in your life that maybe this looks like, or you've seen, like, if someone showed me this and it won a photo award at like the local county fair for weird couples, I'd be like, yeah, that's a real couple. Like that's a couple. They did that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've seen a bloke who looks almost exactly like that before.
Exactly. So and once again, I really had to be curator on this because I probably cut out half the couples. I believe this is the last couple, but just from a weird standpoint, that was incredible. We're gonna just speed up a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Go faster. That's cool. I mean,
Pet project. These is
yeah. So
very
I went
interesting.
through, animals. They're colourful, and pet portraits are interesting things. So again, this was all just me exploring what's possible. Can you do portraits with animals? And indeed, you can. Um,
These
and
are the one on the left is just amazing. It looks like some type of I would say an Irish wolfhound. I also don't know anything about animals, but I want people to know that I had more pictures of dogs than I did other animals because I know people love their dogs as opposed to the birds and the cats. The one on the left I think is absolutely stunning, of that child and that pup. The one on the right, that dog almost looks quasi surreal. But yeah, these
Yeah, I mean,
images are
yeah, I
amazing.
mean, obviously not all of them are going to be anatomically accurate, but
Right.
they're fairly photorealistic. I've endeavored to make sure, that the hands and the feet and everything is in proportion in terms of the children. And then, yeah, the dogs are just a bit of a wild card, really. Not sure
They
if
are.
any of these breeds actually exist.
Well, good, because I'm not good with dog breeds. Everyone else in the
Yeah.
world is. And I'm always like, oh, look at that dog. And they're like, half whatever, three quarters whatever, it goes to therapy. And I'm like, it's just an animal. I'm not good with that. Let's go to photo 51. I want to kind of fly through this. This was called photo 51, but I want to call out that each file was called DNA. So are these supposed to be looks at DNA under a microscope?
Yeah, so photo 51 is it's a reference to a famous photo that was
Okay,
taken that led to Crick and Watson discovering the alpha helix structure of DNA. So
got you.
I played around with that. I was looking at something that had a kind of photographical kind of feel, but was more abstract. Again, with a view to potentially doing something on the generative art side of NFTs. So they look a bit like X-rays, but they're based on the photo 51. So the structure of DNA, the alpha helix, and I just thought they were very interesting kind of representations of that, because they're abstract, but they look kind of semi-biological as well in terms of the geometry and the translucency and all the rest of it. So I just thought they were interesting. It's not just all about photography. You can abstract those kind of qualities, photographic qualities, into a more abstract kind of art as well.
Yeah, and looking at this one, and obviously any of these, if you look close enough and you look long enough, none of them are symmetrical, which is interesting because I think a lot of times when people started to play with AI, it gave you a lot of symmetry. And there's no photo that you've created here with AI that is perfectly symmetrical, which I think speaks to how I want to say non-AI or human or more from the reality it is, because there's very few things in our entire lives, anything we look at, that is perfectly symmetrical. And these are clearly not. And that's why I was pretty blown away at some of these pictures. Um, I want to go right into snowscapes. It's getting colder, so these photos are now not as fun to look at as when I first saw them when I was in Colombia. It was 75 and sunny. What was the inspiration to do these?
Well, it was just, again, an experiment. Snow doesn't happen very often in the south of England where I live, and whenever it has snowed, I often would grab a camera and head out, because the light's very different, and you get these kind of opportunities to take minimalist landscapes. So I just decided to see whether or not AI could handle such a brief, and I was suggesting lines of trees and fence posts and various things. And the other thing I kind of realized as a result of doing it, which the final image will demonstrate, is that you can go anywhere in the world. You can decide that you want to project a snowscape involving Mount Fuji in the background. And I mean, that's kind of amazing, really, to think, especially when you look at how sophisticated these tools might be in 5 years' time. You can basically just say what you want, like reading off a menu,
Mhm.
and create a landscape with Mount Fuji in the background, in this case, on after a snowstorm.
Yeah, this one specific, I was going to ask you if it was Mount Fuji. It looks just so picturesque. And this going back, this one looks like the you had that picture of the dead trees out in Ireland, and when I saw this one, looks similar to that in the sense that they're picture perfect, right? And obviously, this one was done on AI, but your other one is a real photo, and so it's like on some level, the
That's
LLM.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hadn't really thought of it, but you're right. It's kind of like there's a kind of an influence there.
it feels like it. I mean, that's obviously I have 100 and something photos of yours, and these are the two that look kind of similar.
Hmm.
Um, let's get right into the Fashionistas. And also, that comment was made by Vanessa Gutierrez, who her children are actually on More Than Blockchain, and she is creating hrpartner.ai. So shout out to Vanessa. Thank you for watching. The Fashionistas. This was a very interesting one, and I talk to me about where you got the inspiration to kind of go in this direction, because the colors are just incredible. Like, this looks like it's in some fjord or something, and then there's hippies from like Woodstock. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
it was kind of the idea was that there were this group of people who were fashionistas, you know, as a kind of like a just an idea for a collection of portraits that involved kind of um, uh, aspects of fashion photography, but not in an overtly high fashion way like the Vogue images that you mentioned earlier that we might get a chance to see. So this was like I guess it was like mixing a bit of Vogue with a bit of Odd Couples in terms of the style of and the feel of the collection.
I just, this is, the Fashionistas are one of the ones that I'm just kind of like, whoa. Um, I also think your art, your AI art is so different. I could see where you could get really comfortable in just doing architecture, and just doing these interior rooms. But here you are with Fashionistas, which, like you said, builds on kind of the Odd Couples. And then I kind of want to, I want to call this one out because I thought it was Harry Styles when I saw it. Um, I want to get into the Vogue editorial, but I also want to throw up a comment. This is from Vanessa. I don't know why her name isn't populating. We're obviously friends on LinkedIn. She says, "This is a phenomenal talent. Are you monetizing on this in any way? I'm seeing more people create prompt libraries and monetizing on annual subscription models." Vanessa, maybe we can leave your answer to that till we get to the end. I just kind of wanted to call it out in real time because I do want to talk about where this is all going. If you're cool with that, let's get into Vogue
Yeah,
editorial.
thanks for the comment, Vanessa. I'll
Yeah.
talk about it later.
Unbelievable. This photo itself is something I feel like you would see on a runway, some kind of a headdress on a model. This one as well, and the background here is just stunning.
Yeah, so this was very much going for that kind of high fashion Vogue editorial shoot vibe, and seeing if it could maybe suggest looks and clothes again in terms of that industrial design kind of thing, whether or not you could actually use AI to generate outfits that could be mood boarded and then created on a commercial basis. So I wanted to kind of go for that high fashion look and with futuristic elements and see what happened. So
I think it was achieved. I went back to this image only because this reminds me of the I forget the name of the song by Jamiroquai, but this looks like what the music video looked like back in the 90s.
yeah, I know
Um,
the one you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of the name, but Jamiroquai. If you know what I'm talking about, if you know, you know, right? Um, Road to Nowhere. I believe this is the last kind of gallery we'll look at of your AI art. And I want to say that I only put in about half of the images that you sent over. And I also want to give you time before we jump into these images. Can you talk a little bit about this specific gallery? I think that this is needs a little bit more context built before we get into the images.
Yeah, I mean, this was a total wild card, really. I wanted to
Mhm.
see. So the title refers to a Talking Heads song, which is about the fact that really we're all going nowhere in a materialistic society or whatever. But um,
It's a way to end on a crescendo, right, Brian?
yeah, but what I was doing is it was based on the idea of prompting AI to come up with a photograph of absolutely nothing and to see what it did. And the idea behind this was based on something called a Rorschach test, which is a test that was invented by, I think it was a Swedish psychiatrist, and it's basically an ink blot which is symmetrically formed by putting ink on a piece of blotting paper and folding it in two, and you get these patterns, and then you show the patterns to a patient and ask them what they see, and what they see is obviously, because it's a randomly generated ink blot, what they see says much more about what's on the internal side of them than it does about the image itself. So I had this kind of conceit that by asking AI to present me with a photograph of nothing, that it was actually going to reveal something about what about the internal workings of the AI's internal landscape, and also perhaps to reveal something about what it considers nothing to be. And there were some very interesting symbols, like red balloons came up, and I had no idea where that came from. And quite a lot of it's kind of apocalyptic. And I've done some thinking, and some of it's to do with a world that is where civilization has broken down, perhaps a world where there isn't much electricity, which is what, from the perspective of an AI, a world without electricity is probably nothing. And yeah, but there were some of these symbols that kept coming back, like red chairs and red balloons, and it was all a bit apocalyptic, and I just very interesting. So I went down this rabbit hole, and I just kept going, because it was just, I found it like an amazing experiment, and much more kind of exploring this new artistic medium rather than just trying to recreate aspects of things that have already been created in the camera or whatever.
And were all these created on Midjourney? This also is one of my favorite. I just think the vast expansiveness of wherever we are, the fact that it looks so dry for a long periods of time, and then it looks like there's rain, and then there's rain in the foreground, but there's nothing. And that contrast to me is super powerful in a world where we know right now there's flooding in places that there's never been flooding before, but at the same time there is dryness and it complete, sequías. Why can't I think of words in English today? Drought. Thank you. In places where there hasn't been drought before. And at the same time, we're all just sitting on comfy couches. This to me says climate change in so many ways. I know that was probably a dive and a jump into it, but maybe that's my Rorschach test, where I look at this and I see climate change. Right. And that speaks to what's on my mind, what I'm thinking about. But was this created all? Talk to me about the tools that you use, and I've already kind of gone through some of the photos. This one is also one of the images. One of the things is the faces. Humans aren't looking at you. There's only one image,
Right.
and that I've shared, but this boy, this could be out of Interstellar, right? Where there's now all these dust explosions next to the cornfield or the field that he's near. This looks like an Alfred Hitchcock birds apocalypse, where only the birds survive, and they, survive off the humans or something. And maybe that's dark. This looks like something out of the Matrix, when literally Lawrence Fishburne is talking about the Matrix to Neo, right? And he's talking about what it looks like. Another chair, red, looking into the horizon, and this is where we are. But how did you, what did you use for this?
I mean, it's all Midjourney, basically. I mean, and most of the characters, I mean, there are quite a lot of landscapes not involving anyone at all, but the ones that did feature people were predominantly anonymous, in the sense that they were of people looking away into the distance. There are a few exceptions, but yeah, this is, I mean, the images you've got here are quite representative of the entire collection of work. And I think I probably made about, I don't know, I think I selected and archived upwards of 500 images in this collection already. And I guess it would be a question of trying to get it down into a smaller exhibition, and upscaling some of the images so that you could make prints out of them or something like that.
Yeah, because this image specifically was so interesting to look at. So you clearly have a child who's looking out onto what looks like an ocean, but as you look closer, it looks like there are glaciers, or there's ice that's been broken up. Yet the child is in shorts. So is it cold or is it warm out? And then is that something burning in the background that's creating that smoke? And if it is, why is it in such a V shape? Was it a rocket launch? What is happening that the child can look at? And is it in the ocean? I don't know. I looked at this one for a while, and this also felt very apocalyptic. This is maybe one of the more stunning images. And it's stunning because it looks like he's at a lake or something that is now dead, and it's just covered in trash, human trash, and he's just sitting there. I mean, this is like, some of these images are very apocalyptic, and it's interesting that when AI thinks about what nothing looks like, it looks like the end of our world, the end of our known world. And this image and this image, they look like they're out of The Road, right? We're in this post-apocalyptic world. Everything's kind of dingy. There's a lot of clouds. We don't see direct sunlight. There's kind of a glow.
Yeah, I mean, these images, I guess most of them are probably 6 months, 8 months old now. But when I was going through them and getting them together, and the apocalyptic nature became clear, it was kind of like, and then the red balloons. There's a song called 99 Red Balloons. I don't know if you've got any of the balloon ones in here.
Yep, I do. And there were more. I selected. I really like this one. I love this image. The colors are just so freaking strong. This image is amazing. It's like a trailer, or they were driving out in the middle of nowhere and it broke down, but that's still where they live. Here's the balloons. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know whether it's true. It's something that the internet thinks is true, is that the 99 Red Balloons song was a reference to nuclear war. So it's kind of like, it was odd to me that there was this red balloon thing. And I was kind of feeling that these were apocalyptic in the sense of a world after it had been ravaged by war, really. So given what's been going on recently with the standoff between Russia and NATO, when I was kind of going through these, that was kind of on my mind, that an end of civilization, is something that is of immediate concern, in the world at the moment.
It is, and I think that this is one of the only images. There was another image where the man was sitting in a chair and the sunlight was coming in. This is one of the more kind of disturbing images that I think I shared. There's a couple I curated out, but this one where he's clearly trying to eat, but he's just in a room of mud, mud, and looks like sticks. This is another image, and the other thing that's fascinating about this is that the outside, or is that some kind of a screen that has that image on it? Um,
Yeah,
you
there
can
were a
go
lot
either
like
way.
that, where
Yeah.
the frame, a frame within a frame, and some of them it's difficult to tell.
Mhm.
To me, that's the outside world through a
Same. It
yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Wow. We've kind of ended question and answers. I have someone asked and they said, "Hello, amazing work. I just joined. Are these created with Midjourney?" I think you kind of spoke about that.
Yep, these are all Mid-Journey, and yeah, the majority of them have been taken over the last year. Um, I think all of these are version 5 or version 6. So
Okay. Sweet. I had the same question that Vanessa had, and then we are coming up on an hour and a half. So I want to make sure you get back to your Saturday, and other people who are watching get back to their Saturday. But the question I had for you is the next step, and Vanessa kind of built into this. Are you putting these on the blockchain? You had mentioned NFTs. For those watching that don't know about NFTs, that's a non-fungible token. It's a way to put something onto the blockchain that you can exchange or buy. Think of it as a unique, think of it, it could be, obviously it's used a lot in art, but it could be any other file, basically any digital file you can put up on the blockchain. And then it can, so it can prove provenance, and then can also be sold and traded. So are you going down the NFT route? Is that something maybe you're waiting until the bull market heats up a little bit more? And if you do go down the NFT route, I'm throwing a lot at you, sorry. If you do go down the NFT route, what chain are you going to use?
yeah, so I mean, I've the first thing to mention is that it's a real grey area with respect to copyright at the moment. I
Exactly.
mean, even if the works aren't derivative, I mean, nothing I've done is based on copying anyone else, any other artists, living or dead artists' work. I would consider all of them to be original works, which are part of, a creative prompting process and curatorial oversight and reiterating and reiterating and reiterating and so on. So I see them very much as tools. That said, there is no copyright at the moment, and those kinds of issues will have to be considered through case law and all the rest of it. It's going to be a process. But at the moment, you can't really protect the rights to any image. So an NFT collection becomes an interesting vehicle, because really it doesn't matter then whether or not you own the copyright of the image. What you're selling is the provenance of the NFT collection, which can demonstrably be a one of one in a collection of 1,000 or however many you choose. So yeah, and so I have considered doing an NFT collection, and then NFTs kind of felt like they went off the boil. So I've been kind of holding back and waiting to see what happens on that front before throwing my hat in the ring. And I'm very much thinking about Solana as the blockchain, because I'm fed up with ETH myself, as a one-time user of ETH, and I want it to be a low friction, low transaction fee kind of environment. I'd like to be able to institute a kind of secondary sales creator royalty system somehow. I think you can probably do that via smart contracts on the Solana blockchain. The idea being that I could keep the initial sale price low, rather than charging whatever a few $100 per NFT at the mint price, the initial sale. I could price them competitively to begin with, but get a 5% kickback every time they were sold thereafter, which would sweeten the deal in terms of keeping the entry price low at the beginning. So I'm considering all of those things, and then the other route to go is to actually take them into the analog world somehow, to print them, to use other tools to upscale and retouch, and then to print them out onto a physical medium and sell them as limited edition prints, for example, or exhibit them in some way. And some of that, for example, with the black and white prints, I'm even thinking about doing in an analog way. So going on to a silver gelatin black and white printing process, because I'm quite interested kind of blending this idea of taking the AI back into the world of traditional black and white photography somehow. So yeah.
Whatever you do, know that myself and probably others watching are going to be very interested to support via buying. I'm going to just brag a little bit about something here. I finally got in the mail from Jonathan Schultz. He is an artist, and he creates ordinals, which is on the Bitcoin blockchain. And I actually just got this recently from him, which I'm really excited to get into and hang up on the wall. And they're 2 ordinals, and he also gave out the physical. So I would also be excited if you did do a phygital, so that way I can put stuff on the wall, but then also have it on the chain to be able to prove digital provenance. Very excited to see what that looks like, and know that you count with, you have Future Signal as a supporter.
Thank you.
I think I have a couple more slides to kind of do some fun stuff. So next week, Grant is coming on. Oh, and that image didn't work. Well, Grant is coming on. That should have been the picture for Grant. Grant will be coming on. It's Small Business Saturday. It's November 30th, so a week from today. And he'll be coming on. And what we're going to talk about is tech. The tech he's using to stay relevant in an AI world. So this is both as an influencer, as a creator, as a small business owner. Even for me to get Future Signal up, I'm using a streaming platform, which is a third party. If you go to the website, futuresignal.xyz, that is built by Squarespace. We're going live over 5 different platforms right now. This presentation that you've seen was built on Canva. I have a bunch of paid subscriptions. I pay for a bunch of different things that I need to be able to get Future Signal off the ground. And I think it's going to be interesting for Grant on Small Business Saturday to hop on and talk a little bit about the tech that he's using, both some with AI, some not with AI. Most things have some kind of an AI or automation component. But what I wanted to do, and I'm stealing a little bit, this is not my idea, but I was listening to let me find it, the Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. Maybe you've heard that podcast. If not, I'm shilling it a little bit. But what he does at the end, and you're the first one to do this, he has every guest, and you're going to know the question for Grant. Normally, he has the guests ask questions for the following guests, and they don't know who they are. But since you know Grant and you can ask any question, what is a question you have for Grant? And then when Grant and I get to his Q&A section, your question will be first. So please go ahead. What would be your question for Grant? And it doesn't even need to be about the topic we're going to talk about. It could be about anything: Web3, AI, NFT, whether he's going to buy your NFT when you drop it, etc. So I'm putting you in the hot seat a little bit. I don't know if Grant's watching this, so he'll have a leg up on the answer. But yeah, do you have a question for Grant?
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the NFT space or dabbling in the NFT space along with you and Ozzy and whoever else. I'd like to ask him, does he think NFTs are dead? Because that's obviously a bit of a kind of a theme at the moment. I'll keep to myself whether or not I think they're dead or not, but does he think NFTs are dead?
You and I could talk about that for a long time. I'm sure we have our opinions. I'm excited to ask him that because I know for a while with his website company, Spark Sites, he was offering NFTs as membership. He had membership and they were on blockchain. And so I'm interested to ask him, but it's very simply, Grant, do you think NFTs are dead? That is the question that Brian has. So Grant, if you're listening to this, you have a week's head start. And if you're not listening to this, or you're not going to hear this when I put it out on YouTube and podcast, he will have to answer that in the moment. So that's great. Brian, let me go back here. I want to thank you for taking the time today to hop on. This has been great. I've been wanting to share where I feel honored to be able to share your photos. I feel like this was a virtual walk through your multiple galleries and the projects you've been working on, as well as sharing some of your own photography from your MA. I hope that you come back on. I think if you do launch, you should come back on. And even if you don't launch, you should probably come back on and talk about art NFTs and how artists can use the blockchain and AI to monetize. Vanessa was in some of the questions today, and Vanessa's kids, they came on More Than Blockchain, which was the previous iteration of this podcast, now Future Signal, and they were creating stuff using AI, and they were selling them on OpenSea, and I bought a couple of them. So I think that this is definitely a path for people, and I am certain that by the summer of 2025, this will be blowing up. This being AI, art, and blockchain, that is something that's going to continue to allow people who are creative on the internet to be able to make some money, which is great, fiat or otherwise. Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for hopping on. And if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, listen to this on a podcast platform, make sure you see the video of this. And no matter where you're watching this stream live, please follow us. You can see at Future Signal Pod at the top. And if you have any questions, go to futuresignal.xyz, our website. Brian, I'm going to leave your LinkedIn below. I'm also going to leave your blog, which is your blog called In Crypto, which I think whether you're new to crypto or you're old to crypto, or you've been in crypto for 3 months and now you feel like you're old to crypto, you need to check out Brian's blog. I think it's some of the best writing on crypto on the internet. So anyway, Brian, thank you for hopping on Future Signal.
Thanks so much. And thanks for allowing me to showcase my work. It's been great fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.